Welcome to Fixing the Information Crisis Before It's Too Late for Democracy. I'm Courtney Radge, the Director of the Center for Journalism and Liberty, and I'm delighted to be here. Welcome, and thank you for joining Open Markets Institute and the Center for Journalism and Liberty for this event. Around the world, liberal democracies are scrambling to confront a multi-frontal attack on the information and communication systems that we depend on to share news and ideas with each other. And the need for actionable solutions and bold policies could not be more critical. Just this year, we will see elections in the US, in Europe, and more than 80 countries around the world. The stability and perhaps even the survival of democracy is at risk. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken recently summed up the crisis when he said, "Our competitors and adversaries are using disinformation to exploit fissures within our democracies, and now AI is swiftly making the problem worse." Recently, the U.S. Congress voted to ban TikTok from operating in the United States unless it severs its connections to the People's Republic of China. But this is a far bigger problem than just TikTok. Foreign governments and authoritarian regimes are routinely using U.S. platforms to spread their propaganda, and these corporations are anything but victims. On the contrary, they earn billions of dollars from helping these and other actors manipulate and exploit individuals and public opinion. And X, formerly Twitter, has devolved into a megaphone for hate speech and calls for violence, then has turned its account verification system into a pay-to-play model ripe for manipulation. Another problem is how Google and Meta use their power in ways that suppress trustworthy information, and they do so in part by diverting billions of dollars in advertising away from publishers and into their own coffers, and they do so by censoring people's ability to share news with each other, rather than to have to share even a modicum of their profits with news publishers. These corporations have also largely abandoned, or in the word of the New York Times, eviscerated their efforts to control disinformation and other types of spam on their own platforms. Unfortunately, despite an intense focus on threats posed by disinformation since Brexit and the US elections in 2016 and again in 2020, the Rohingya massacre, no democracy has developed a coherent policy to root out the problem. Worse, many of the ad hoc fixes of recent years are breaking down amid the rise in generative AI. So today, we are convening this urgent discussion to identify solutions to the root causes of the information crisis. Today, you will hear from leading policymakers, journalists, experts about how Americans can use existing policy tools to protect our democracy and rebuild a more peaceful, prosperous, and progressive information and communications system that will shape the future of our country and the world. Over to Barry Lynn, Open Markets Institute's Executive Director, who will tell us more about what to expect throughout the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see you here today. As Courtney said, I'm Barry Lynn, and I'm the Executive Director of Open Markets. And we do have a great cast of law enforcers, policymakers, and experts here with us today, not only to describe the nature and origins of this set of terrifying threats to our democracy, but also to identify solutions. We're going to start with European Commission Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager. I'll say more about the Vice President in a few moments. We also have with us Federal Communications Commission Chair Jessica Rosenworcel. And we have Jonathan Kanter, who directs the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. And at 4:30, as our sort of the last speaker, we have U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai. In addition, we have short comments from Senators Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Richard Blumenthal, and from Colorado Congressman Ken Buck. And that's just the headliners. We also have 15 other speakers, each of whom is among the true leaders of one or more of the battles that make up our grand campaign to protect and rebuild American and world democracy. And we also have the great honor today of counting as our co-host The Guardian. And later we will meet the newspaper's U.S. editor, chief counsel, and head technology correspondent. The Guardian has long stood as one of the real few tribunes of a free news media in this age of Google and Facebook. We face many existential threats today, way too many. It would be wrong to say that our topic today is more important than any of these other threats. We must resolve every threat to the foundations of our democracy and our society. It's a big task, but I do believe we must, all of us, prioritize fixing our news and communications crisis. Because if we cannot speak to one another freely, if we cannot report, edit, and share news with one another freely, then we won't be able to fix any of these other challenges. And in some cases, such as our political polarization, this concentration of power and control over our communications platforms is one of the prime causes of the problem. So we were a little slow in starting off because we were having some technical problems getting the Executive Vice President of the European Commission on with us today, but I think we have that resolved. So unless someone waves at me, I am going to introduce Margaret Vestager.